दुर्गा सर आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं.
Okay, so I'll begin now. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see the old Indore group joining again, and I can see lots of new people who have joined. I want to extend a very warm welcome to our speaker, Dr. Neeraja Raghavan. Many of us would know her, but I'll briefly introduce Neeraja ji to all of us. Neeraja ji is the founder, director of Thinking Teacher, NGO, and she's a person of great scholarship. She has a doctorate degree in chemistry from Princeton University, US, one of the Ivy League universities. And her last position was professor at Ajim Premji University in Bangalore. She worked with Ajim Premji Foundation for almost 8 years, mainly in the field of science teacher, education, pedagogy, and curriculum development. She has taught in several mainstream as well as alternative schools in India and has been the principal of a couple of schools, including Rajghat Peasant School. She developed an alternative middle school science curriculum for Shiksha Mitra in Kolkata, a school for some children in 2007. She also developed the middle school science curriculum for the school KFI Chennai in March to May 2006, so as to suit their unique needs and ethos. Her research interests currently focus on teacher development through reflective practices. She has a number of publications to her credit. I'll just read a few. The Reflective Learner, Seeing Missed Talks and Mistakes. This is Notion Press 2019. Teaching Tales, Learning Trials, co-authored with Vinita Sood and Kamala Anil Kumar, Notion Press 2018. The Reflective Teacher with contributing editor Vinita Sood. This is Orient Black Swan in 2015. Co-edited Alternative Schooling in India, a Sage publication in 2007 with Sarojini Vitachi. She also co-edited Childhood Regained, a book on children rescued from child labor, brought out by Hand in Hand Tamil Nadu in 2007. Curator and Curator, Full Circle, 2003. I Wonder Why, it's Children Book Trust, 2004. And I Wonder How, Children's Book Trust in 2006. With these words, I think those of us who have no introduction with Neeraja ji would know her now. And she is going to talk about reflective teaching and writing. It's the educational part of teachings and not the Krishnamurti teachings philosophical side. With these words, I'll request Neeraja ji to please begin your talk. Neeraja ji, as promised, will take about close to 50 minutes, followed by question and answer. And if Professor Krishna and Harshad wants to make some observations, we'll invite them for brief observations on Neeraja ji's talk. So Neeraja ji, the floor is yours now. Please
thank you
unmute
so much.
yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I've unmuted. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Namaste, Professor Krishna. So nice to see you. And thank you. It's very nice to see a lot of old friends. Very grateful for this opportunity because when Dubeyji first contacted me, I did check with him. I said, you know, I won't be in a position to talk about Krishnamurti's teachings. I'm still trying to understand them, but I can talk about what I do. And he said, no issues. You can talk about what you're doing. So at the outset, I would like to say, if you're looking forward to a dialogue of, you know, anything to do with Krishnamurti, I'm really not equipped to do that. So I'm going to be talking about reflective practices in teaching. And I think I can share my screen with you. I hope you can see my screen, Dubeyji.
Yes, yeah. We can.
So I'm going to share some of my explorations on reflective practices in teaching. As a teacher educator, these were my concerns. First one being that a teacher's job is quite repetitive, especially if a teacher is teaching a particular subject or subjects year after year to the same grades. The textbook doesn't change that frequently. The syllabus changes even less frequently. The only change is the students who are coming in every year. That brings in some slight variation in the kind of questions that are asked. But it's very easy for a teacher to get lulled into a very illusory sense of having arrived, because practice makes perfect. And as we keep practicing, churning out the same material, we begin to feel there's no need to look at it again. I know it, I've cracked it. And if at all there is a need felt for teacher development, teachers are usually sent in quotes by the heads of their schools or their administrators to workshops, which I call one size fits all. The workshops are on a theme, on a particular topic, and all teachers are supposed to attend them. It is very rare that teachers are asked for their specific developmental needs. It's ironic that we tell teachers to be child-centric and to understand that every child is different, and therefore a teacher cannot do a one-size-fits-all lesson. But when it comes to teachers, we don't see that teachers are also each one different, and they cannot do with a one-size-fits-all development. So there's somebody who's waiting to enter the waiting room. Yeah. So teachers generally look up to a resource person for fulfilling their needs. This is another concern I had. They don't turn to each other. And somehow it gives them a feeling of always looking up to someone. I have to learn from someone. They don't learn from each other. Very rarely do they. However, it has been my experience, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me, that just a bit of reflection can turn things around. So my questions were, can teachers want to reflect? And if so, how? How can we make them want to reflect? If yes, what are the possible routes to making them see its value? Are there any alternatives to these one-size-fits-all workshops that teachers are sent to? Are there more individualistic ways of engaging with teachers so that their unique needs are respected and honored and addressed? And why must they always depend on a resource person or a head? Can they not learn from each other? Can they not tap into each other's wisdom? It is not to pull down the position of a resource person. There is an expertise which each person carries. But in always depending on a resource person, we forget the expertise that each teacher carries within herself or himself. And last question was, can teachers across the country network with each other? But the reality is that a teacher has numerous tasks. We are familiar with many of them, beginning with lesson planning, to lesson transaction, to assessment and evaluation, designing of innovative evaluations, checking answer sheets, writing reports, attending staff meetings, meeting parents, planning events like assemblies, annual days, exhibitions, and preparing students to participate in such events, supervising extracurricular activities like school magazine, clubs, and so on, substituting for absent teachers, the bane of a teacher's life. I still remember as a teacher, we would dread that substitution register when it came around. Oh no, I have only 2 free periods today and ek chala gaya usme, aaj wo bhi gaya. Preparing students for the board exam, that dreaded task. And in today's pandemic online era, we have added work as teachers. We have to prepare and upload videos. We conduct online classes, and we have to juggle between household work and online sessions because we are working from home. And all the while, straining our eyes with so much screen time. So teachers, when I ask them about reflective practice, they ask me this question. When do you expect us to do all this? Is reflective practice an added expectation? We are doing so much already. When are we going to find time for reflective practice? So then what I tell them is, it's not an added expectation. It's a bit like that tanpura you see on my screen. Those of us who have watched or attended classical music concerts, we would have noticed that constant drone in the background, the tanpura. And when do we notice it? We usually notice it when the performer stops, pauses, either because they want to drink some water or is in between 2 songs, or I think Durga Rani needs to be admitted, yeah. Or there is a need for the percussionist to fix the tabla or the mridangam. At that time, we suddenly noticed, oh dear, that tanpura was there in the background. And that was determining the pitch of the entire concert. It was setting the scale. So in a similar manner, there is a drone going on within our minds. And reflective practice is like that background scale, because we may be unaware of it, but that is setting our pitch. And we are asking ourselves questions, maybe without being aware of it. We're asking questions like, how should this be taught? And that's why we feel a niggling feeling of discontent sometimes, having taught something not so well. We sometimes wonder, why is it important for students to learn this? Just because it's there in the syllabus? Just because it's there in the textbook? When is it best for them to learn it? How did my class go today? Why wasn't I getting the attention of many students in today's class? What, did I assume anything? What did I assume about my students? And how, when do I believe that learning happens best? Not Piaget or Vygotsky or all the theories of learning, but me as a teacher, I must be having some unconscious learning, unarticulated, and I'm operating from that. That's my Tanpura. Can I examine that? And where can I go to develop better communication skills? How can I engage with parents of my students so that they feel trusted? What can we do to enliven our staff meetings? This is just a sample of questions which may be buzzing in the mind of a teacher. They go unarticulated. So I'd like to share with you a few approaches adopted by Thinking Teacher, the concern that I run. First is action research, which can be done during the course of the workday. I will explain each of them. Another is a board game, which can be played by a teacher at his or her own convenience. Takes 20 minutes a time, twice a week. Reflective writing, which we have a 5-week online course, 2 one-hour sessions weekly, a homework assignment in each session. So I will describe each of these briefly. First, action research, for those who don't know, it's a very simple framework where the teacher begins by identifying a problem which the teacher would like to address. And then analyzing that problem, understanding it in depth. Then identifying some strategies to address the problem. And implementing strategies one by one so that the problem at least begins to get addressed, or observing what works and what doesn't work. Finally, reflecting on the whole process and seeing whether a new problem has arisen or the old problem has not yet been addressed, in which case the whole cycle is gone through yet again. As you can see, there's no rocket science. It's a very commonsensical framework. And it's something, without knowing it's called action research, I'm sure many of us are adopting already in our lives. So when we did a study when I was with Azim Premji Foundation, 7 teachers' action research was compiled in this book called The Reflective Teacher. Just a sample of the problems they addressed. Teachers managed to improve English vocabulary of students. There's a YouTube video in this link which you can watch when you have time. Another teacher, because he was teaching in a school in Uttarakhand, where there were a lot of families whose mother tongue was Bengali. This was a place where during the Bangladesh war, the Indian government had given land for these Bangladesh refugees to settle down. So this teacher was teaching EVS, environmental science, to students where the medium of instruction was Hindi. And these Bengali speaking children were not comfortable with Hindi. Now he didn't want to turn into a Hindi teacher. He said, they already have a Hindi teacher. How do I teach them EVS so that they understand EVS without my turning into a Hindi teacher? So that was another, and that's also on YouTube. Another teacher said, I don't like the way students are learning science. They don't ask any questions. They just blindly accept whatever I teach them. That's not science. So his action research was very interesting. He turned it around so that they started asking lots of questions. There were 2 teachers who were teaching math to a mixed class of 6th graders, where some did not even know place value in 6th grade, and some were at the level of 6th grade. So the teachers didn't want to bore those who already knew the stuff and didn't want to baffle those who didn't even know place value. So how they staggered the teaching so that they could scaffold it for those who had not yet understood and yet challenge those who understood. That was their action research. And a couple of teachers said, we want to improve the Hindi reading and comprehension of our students. Now, it seems very obvious that if you have a framework and you systematically go at addressing a problem, you're pretty much assured of success. It's going to work, right? So that's not the main fruit of action research, in my view, as a teacher developer. I feel that you are solving the problem and that satisfies you as a teacher. That's great. But actually, the true fruit of action research is some shift in the thinking of the teacher due to reflection. And an example is the teacher of 17 years experience who improved the English vocabulary of her students. This is what she said. These are her words. Before doing action research, my focus used to mainly be on completing the syllabus. But while doing action research, I realized that far more important than completing or not completing the syllabus is to find out how much each child has understood. And this is a teacher who for 17 years had gone by the maxim, the idiom, syllabus ko complete kiya ki nahi, hurry up, complete the syllabus. That was her obsession. It didn't matter that she had been carrying this for 17 years. 1 4-month cycle of action research made her examine that assumption and actually change it. I see that as the great power of action research. And until that happens, I don't think it has been successful, even if the problem that they identified has been cracked. I would like to share with you another experience of action research of a teacher of EVS in a residential school where grades 4 and 5 were mixed because that was the first year for children in this residential school. This teacher happens to be a senior citizen, and she had earlier been the needlework teacher for the same children. And also because it is a residential school, she had been the dining hall manager. She stepped into the shoes, unfortunately, of a highly popular EVS teacher who left. He was highly popular. I'll give you an example of the things he did. If he had to teach about civics and government, he would dress up like Manmohan Singh, the prime minister of that time, and walk into class with a blue turban and a beard and teach. Now, children would be riveted. If he had to conduct a quiz, he would dress up like Amitabh Bachchan, Kaun Banega Crorepati. Now, you can imagine 4th and 5th graders, they will worship such a teacher. Now, that teacher left, and who stepped into his shoes? This grandmotherly figure, whom the children had stereotyped as someone who could only teach them needlework and be their dining hall manager. And in this school, the children were pretty forthright. So they told her to her face, Akka, you can't teach EVS, Akka. You're needlework teacher, Akka. You're dining hall manager, Akka. Now, this teacher also had a temperamental, her nature was such that she was a very soft person. She still is. So she didn't find classroom management to be something that she felt up to doing. She carried this idealistic belief that discipline must come from within the child. So classroom management was a huge challenge for her. I observed her class. There was utter chaos. The children would walk around the class while she was there. They'd say, Akka, look at this boy, he's pulling my hair. Akka, look at this girl, she's pulling the chair. Oh, they're pulling the chair, don't pull the chair. Pulling the hair, don't pull the hair. This is what was happening in the class. Not much E or V or S was happening. The same children, however, I saw them in the math class, a no-nonsense math teacher who came in and pin drop silence. They did their math like model students. So children are very smart. They know with whom they can act funny and with whom they have to behave. And they did. They took her for a ride. She undertook action research, and she framed her action research problem as, I want to make my EVS classes highly engaging. But as she framed it, I thought to myself, that's a far way ahead yet. She has to first manage her class. But I didn't say anything, being her facilitator. I just noted down her problem. And then I started the process of analysis. I said, what do you mean by highly engaged in EVS? Is nobody engaged? Are some of them engaged? Are the same ones disengaged? And so on. Within 10 minutes, she said, no, Neeraja, that's not my action research problem. I said, oh, okay, then what is it? She said, classroom management. I said, bingo, that's your problem. So then we went about addressing it. And I would invite you to read the research paper. It's a very fascinating story of how within 4 months, she transformed her class into a vibrant class of learners of EVS, where if there was noise, it was noise because the children were asking questions related to EVS. Earlier, teachers in the neighboring class would come and knock on her door and say, how long is it going to take for your students to settle down? The noise is disturbing my class next door. The same teachers now, after her 4 months of action research, would come and request her, can you please take care of my students? I have to step out for 10 minutes. Can you manage my class for me? And her students would say, we love EVS. Can you get promoted with us to the next year? Akka, we would like you to teach us next year also. So that's one huge success story in the case of this teacher. And there are so many others who have conducted action research on problems like exciting students about chemistry, developing a sense of responsibility in middle schoolers. One teacher said, I've suddenly been told to become a mentor to other teachers, and I'm very nervous about this because I've only used to being a teacher. How do I start mentoring my colleagues? So that was her action research. Another teacher said, I want to enhance discipline in middle school. They're not all that disciplined. I want to enhance that. Another teacher said, I want to ignite the fire of curiosity in my students in science. And yet another said, we're an alternative school. And there are many teachers and students and parents who think alternative school means it's just fun all the way. There's no rigor. Everything is fun and play. I want to bring in a balance of rigor and fun. So that was her action research. So during all these and many more, what was beautiful was that teachers revisited their assumptions, even as they cracked their action research problem. There was one-on-one facilitation done by me with the teacher of the problem of interest to the teacher concerned. So it was not a one-size-fits-all program. And the only not so great thing was it was still being driven by a resource person. They were looking up to a facilitator to help them move forward. So that still remains to be addressed. Next thing we did, my colleagues and I, was to use the power of stories. I don't think any teacher needs convincing of the power of stories. Which teacher does not use stories to draw in the attention or hook the children? We said, why don't we use stories to get teachers to reflect? So Thinking Teacher compiled 10 stories about teaching and learning in the Indian school scenario. And they were all what we called fictionalized fact, because the three of us have many years of teaching experience behind us. We have so many little stories from our experience. So we took a story from here, a story from there, added some fiction, and knitted 10 stories together. The stories are followed, the second half of the book, by discussion by different stakeholders. So we formed Google groups of parents, teachers, students, teacher developers, teacher trainees, and principals of schools. And these 6 groups, they discussed the stories, and that is the second half of the book. The idea was teachers reading this can look at the discussion and they can discuss in their schools. Whole idea was to provoke reflection. And we found teachers are indeed reading these stories. We were not sure how many were discussing them, however. They would write in saying, we love the stories, this is exactly what's happening in our lives. But when we would ask them, are you discussing them? There would be a resounding silence. So then we decided, let's design a board game. And the board game required that each teacher in a team of 3 teachers would read a couple of pages at a time from a selected story and pick one of 3 cards. Each of the cards had a different question, a question that provoked reflection. So each teacher would reflect on the question contained in her card or his card and then share it with the team members. All this demanded of the teacher was 20 minutes in a day, and that too only on 2 days in a week. So after that, we conducted 2 cycles of that. That was quite successful. But now to go a little deeper, the third method that we adopted was reflective writing for teachers. And during the pandemic, it turned into an online version of the course, where there are 10 online classes for teachers across the country to read, discuss, reflect, and write. Readings were drawn from authors like John Holt, Parker J. Palmer, Tara Westover, and they watched TED Talks, short clips, even newspaper middles they read, and discussed issues of concern to students, parents, report cards, and discussed often teachers' dilemmas. As they shared different perspectives, they began listening to each other and they started reading aloud their writings. And you can find more of this in our website. But I'd like to share one experience of reflective writing. This is one of the few male teachers in the course. Teaching profession by and large, as we all know, is dominated by the female gender for many cultural and social reasons. So even in our online course, it was rare that we had male participants. And when we had them, they were mostly quiet because they were so overpowered by the predominantly female presence. So this was a particularly quiet man, a house parent in an international school in Sikkim, Gangtok. But he really surprised me with his end of course writing. This is what he wrote. He said, this course has been the highlight of 2020 for me. It has, in fact, been a spiritual experience for me. While doing assignments, I got the opportunity to go back to many of my past experiences, pleasant and unpleasant. Those reflections have helped me to get in touch with my inner being and have made me understand myself better. This course has also taught me to live in the present moment. Reflecting on my past experiences and reliving those moments have helped me to be aware and alert of the present moment. The effect of this course on me has been such that in the midst of daily activities, I find myself pausing for a while and distancing myself from me so as to be aware of my feelings and present experience. I feel that this course has awakened all my senses. I feel fully alive now. I am no more floating on the surface. I find it difficult to describe my experiences in words, but my learning from this course is that reflecting on our daily experiences gives us the joy of living. Without reflection, we are only living on the surface, an artificial life. And mind mapping is a powerful tool for reflection. Not everyone shared such a beautiful sharing. And ironically, he says he finds it difficult to describe his experience in words. I can't think of a more beautiful way of describing. So there has been a spectrum of responses, but by and large, it has been very successful, this course, in provoking reflection in teachers and getting them to record their reflections in writing. So we've had 5 batches of 10 teachers each in 2020, and they engage with others like them across the country. As I said, they read and reflect together. They get new ideas from each other. They feel listened to. They feel valued. They find it motivating and energizing, and many teachers ask for more. So another program was offered titled Teachers' Jottings. Now, I had to be careful when I designed this program because I could see that the time demanded from them for reflective writing could not be sustained. It had to be a program which demanded less time from them and yet allowed them to engage with each other. But also my intention was now to gradually shift the steering wheel from the resource person to teachers. That was the vision I had. So in Teacher Jottings, we began in December 2020. That's a screenshot of the participants. That was, there was something called the Nobel Week Dialogue on the internet. So the assignment was that they watch that dialogue and they answer some questions based on those 2 clips. And then there were these little prompts at the bottom, as you can see. Use any blank box to record your feelings. So instead of writing an assignment as they did for reflective writing, they would just write, today I'm feeling, today I felt, today I missed my looking within, today I felt happy, today I felt grateful. So it just brought out their feelings and it didn't take too long. What interesting thing that happened to this was they enjoyed it so much over 6 weeks that they said, now let's form a community of reflective practitioners. This community continues to exist. We are starting our 3rd cycle on the coming Tuesday, and we call ourselves the L-Core, the Learning Community of Reflective Practitioners. And this L-Core has a large group of 18 teachers and is divided into 3 clusters of smaller members, number of members each. Spread across India and even 1 member from Abu Dhabi, the encircled cities are where the participants are from. At the end of the program of teachers as change agents, they said, we are going to come up with our own action research problems. And each one of them is working on problems, a sample of which I'm showing you here. One teacher said, I want to empower teachers to strike a balance between perfectionism and time management, which are usually the diametric pulls for every teacher. Another teacher said, I want to nurture critical and reflective thinking among teachers so that they can in turn develop it in their students, ultimately leading to a more conscious citizenry capable of functioning effectively in a democracy. Another teacher said, she's a teacher of Hindi. She said, I want to empower children to form a deep relationship with the local community through my language classes. Interesting thing is, she teaches in a residential school in Andhra, where the local language is Telugu. And when I asked her, you teach Hindi and you want them to form a relationship with the local community through your Hindi classes? She brushed it aside. She said, Akka, I will find a way. This is something I really want to do. So she's just fired with the zeal. The language issue doesn't bother her at all. She's going to forge deep bonds with the local community. Another teacher said, I want to empower teachers to move away from product-driven approach to a process-focused one. This is a headmistress of a school in a nursery section. And she said, I want to see the teachers to get children involved in active engagement through inquiry, exploration, questioning, application, and reflection. So this headmistress, she's the headmistress of a reputed school of a nursery section. And this is her action research, to empower teachers to focus on the process of learning rather than just the outcome. Usually, she talked throughout her staff meetings while her teachers listened to her. This was the way she conducted her staff meetings. But she experienced something different in our large group as well as cluster meetings. And somehow she said, why don't I adopt this approach in my next staff meeting? This made her revisit, when she did it like that, it made her revisit her initial assumption, which was teachers are excellent at implementation. They're not so good at generating ideas. She came away from that one staff meeting, which she conducted differently, saying, I was wrong. Give them a chance. They're good at generating ideas as well. Unwittingly, what I was found remarkable was she had started by herself first focusing on the process. She who wanted teachers to focus on the process had begun by herself focusing on the process of her staff meetings, and that brought about a shift in her own assumptions. So I would like to share with you a short clip. It's only 7 minutes of a cluster meeting, for which I'll have to stop share and start share again. So here goes.
Feeling as I'm listening to this is that would a methodology that Neeraja uses with us work with in the same way with teachers and maybe with children?
Yes, it would. I think so too. Currently, our purpose is to work on the teacher, because the trickling down has to happen via the teachers only. Yes. So our focus currently is only the teachers.
So it would mean that she gives the problem and then she asks you to reflect on it, think about it. So similar kind of methodology, if it is used in this project, then maybe it would work better. Suppose you do what you are doing just now. We are doing just now, questioning us.
Yes.
Suppose the same thing is done with teachers. Your next, maybe your next, what do you call it, staff meeting becomes a questioning meeting.
Yes, yes. For example, like let me give you one effective example that we can throw at the teachers. Let me read it out to you. A character sketch is a written description of another person or even of yourself. It is a very handy technique to use when you're having a conflict with someone, when you want to see how you might be coming across to someone else, or when you want to get to know the different parts of yourself in a more direct and intimate way. So phrasing something like this and presenting it to the teachers, whereby they start reflecting, and whether they do it individually or whether they want to team up with someone, we can do it in different formats. That's
We
how
can have clusters.
we can do it that. Yeah. So each one, for example, they have a particular problem they want to deal with. They actually sit and write down the problem and the things around it.
Yeah, that's right. You know, we can always.
Yeah. Eventually, they will come to the conclusion that we are hoping they will come to. That's a
So Neeraja's
motive.
method might work.
Neeraja's method will work.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah, it might work.
yeah, you have an internal churning also, and you're churning with them, and then you
I'm all set to implement.
Yeah, and they have this method, routine called as peeling the fruit.
Yes.
So from the surface you keep peeling. Okay, what is the problem? What is the problem? How can you solve? So to come to the core of the problem,
Precisely.
when you keep peeling of layers,
Yeah.
yeah.
Questioning will work very well. So as we go along, you can use the same methodology, and
And once the
Actually, you
teachers,
can have.
once the teachers understand how they felt, the eureka moment that they feel, and or the entire process in which they actually got about the revelation or the realization is something that sits so well in them that the only thing that they will do is to actually take it down forward.
Yeah. Now there's a lot more clarity on our project.
Yeah.
I had a talk with Ratna the other day, Ratnaka, the one who's in our group. I had a talk with her, and she was also telling me something similar, what she did as part of the action research, and the effect that she managed to have is especially it works beautifully when there are children of different ages. So the older children are the ones who are kind of mentoring the younger children, and they work on a particular thing together. So for example, this garbage thing, the older children have a certain level of knowledge, which is a lot more as compared to the younger ones. So together it's like they are teaching them, but they are working together as a team. And at the end of it all, that project is presented in different formats. Like it can either be a skit, or it can be a presentation, or it can be a display, a chart similar to that. Yeah. So exactly what you were saying. Really fantastic. So if at all we
Fantastic,
absolutely. I was so enthralled listening to her.
Yeah.
A lot of thinking.
There's one input I'd like to give here is when we say brainstorming becomes difficult in large groups, basically what we can do, like for example, we would do in a workshop for teachers, we would cluster them, and they would brainstorm among themselves given a certain time limit. Once they do the brainstorming among themselves, they come up with a summary of what they have come up with, the points that they've come up with. So each time we do that same thing, we
Here
don't
the
have,
age.
I'm talking here about teachers currently.
Yeah.
Now, each time we do a brainstorming for different topics, it's not the same person who's going to do the presenting or sharing. So we also have that rotation factor keyed in.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we can do that. It's doable. It's okay. Nice. Very nice.
I think it's quite late now. Let's, but it's been
Quite
very interesting. We have gone
Very
through
interesting.
a lot and very intense kind of. Yeah. So,
I'm already something with excitement.
what are we supposed to do?
I'm like all ready to implement in my school. I'm so happy that
we are waiting for you to be excited.
Yeah.
What is my job?
One was the reality. And what was different in my last week's meet? I never had an agenda in mind. I started with a positive note that a parent had written about the teachers, appreciating the teachers for their online sessions. And I asked, this made them think and also listen to me more. So what I did was, what do you think we need to change for the next academic year in terms of instructions to children, either cultural change or curriculum change, assessment, pedagogy, collaboration, etc., etc. So what do you think we need to change for the next academic year? And initially there was like a lot of silence, and then they started responding.
So that was the experience of this cluster, I'd like to go back now to my, go back to the presentation. There's another teacher in this group who is very concerned about time management. And this is her action research problem. She said, I want to empower teachers to strike a balance between perfectionism and time management, which are usually the diametric poles for every teacher. And she had sent me a not quite so articulate version of the above statement. So when I was compiling the statements, the problem statements of all the teachers, I telephoned her saying, what exactly did you mean? Didi, she said briskly, I need to step out in 5 minutes. She was at home and she had to step out. Brushing aside her urgency, I quickly proceeded to re-articulate what I had absorbed from her initial statement. Bang on, she said. That's exactly what I want to work on. And so it was that her AR problem, which dealt with time management, was crystallized under pressure of time. So I found it very strange that this sample exchange perhaps will illustrate what I'm trying to say. I got a WhatsApp message from the teacher one day saying, Neeraja Didi, I have a question to ask. If you were working on my project, what would be your concern? Finishing it fast or working on it in a sustained manner, even if it takes time? Would you not be concerned by the thought, what if someone else comes up with the same work before me? My answer was, I wouldn't be at all concerned about that. I would take my time. Precisely because that is the crux of my action research, time. So throughout her action research, which is still going on, I find that I'm not able to separate her from the problem. Did the teacher choose the action research problem? Or did the action research problem choose the teacher? This is a question I'm still asking. But what is beautiful is what's happening is now they are tapping into each other's wisdom. As you got a glimpse in that cluster meeting, teachers talk and listen to each other. They seek each other's views on their action research. They demand tangible outcomes from each other. They say, how will you know that your action research is over? How will you know? What are your tangible outcomes? They even suggest readings to each other of relevance and discuss them in the cluster meetings. For instance, this is a book which the cluster which you just saw, they not only read and discussed in their cluster, they're going to now present it in the large group, the gist of this book. The best part is they find that these meetings with teachers across the country helps them unwind. Many of them have said, I was so tired today, I thought I'll skip today's meeting. But I'm so glad I joined it because now I'm energized after meeting all the teachers. So they find a voice for the seldom heard, or maybe even seldom respected teacher. And now I can see a slow shift from it being driven by the resource person. That meeting you saw a glimpse of, I was not present. It was only the cluster. I'd like to share with you a sample clip, which is about just 15 minutes long. And again, I'll have to stop share it with you.
Where did the idea come from? This was Neeraja had shared at the end of first session, the entire the teacher jota session. Education for Warford to seeing themselves as future experts and decision makers and of assuming that their viewpoint mattered to others. Still others stated that they were in the habit of expecting to be treated respectfully, to be listened to and to be taken seriously. I felt this is where I felt that this would be a good option for both teachers and students on how do we improve things in school as a culture. So this is where I had got that idea from. But from taking student teacher, because I still have a very young school. We're just in our third academic year, and teachers want to be treated respectfully. If they had to be taken seriously, then we need to empower them. So that's where the first idea came from. Okay. Then second, the mainstream conventional school. And for the past 3 years, we've been doing a lot in terms of teacher development, but most of it is driven by me. Okay. But I wanted that shift to happen where they take the onus, and I want them to
have that power to decide on what they want to do, how they want to do, and implement it. Because when they do it, they will have a lot more serious and accountability for themselves. So they know that they are in control of things and they are doing it for themselves rather than for me. Because right now it is led by me and I have to constantly nudge. Neeraja shared this paper. When I read the entire thing, I said, why not allow the teachers to have a say in what they want to improve and empower them is where the idea came from. Okay. Initially, when I shared my AR to the entire team, I got a lot of questions. And a lot of these questions were very helpful for me and it triggered a lot of things. And at that point of time, what I was still looking at was how do I lead it? How do I, I was still looking at it from my perspective. So for example, when many of those questions came to me, for instance, when we had to look at career graph of teachers, plot them in career graph, I was looking at more of, yes, it is needed. Maybe I need to plot them and then see from there, how do we improve them, like zone of proximal development. So that is what I was looking at. Or when, when Shubhangi and I had a discussion about vision statement, I felt quite excited about it. So I felt all these things will help me to, like the how of my AR. So I was looking at that. But then, somewhere down the line, there were two things that kind of hit me also. I was quite, I think I was looking at it just from my own lens and not looking at from anything else, any other point of view. But there were two things that kind of made me trigger. One, now ours is a CBSE school, mainstream school. So we cannot call ourselves a alternate school and do what we like. We have a structured curriculum, which we have to follow. And our parents are the parents who will want to see that curriculum is being transacted in the classroom. So I cannot go ahead and we cannot change something. So certain things will remain the same. Second, our school already has a vision statement. Now, when I, as a principal and as a team, we should work in alignment with the vision. I cannot have a different statement. I cannot go take the teachers to the process of creating a vision because the school already has a set of vision. When I sat down and started to think, one, it's easy to plot someone on a graph when you're marking them on some numericals. For example, we take the test scores. But here, teachers are not doing that. Teachers are transacting lessons. So on what basis do I plot them? Okay. And these are teachers whom I already have taken and have been with us for the past 3 years. Now, if I have to plot them and say that this is where you're on the career graph and this is where you need to move, I'm not sure whether I'll be doing the right thing for the teachers' morale. The idea of the entire thing is to empower the teachers to get better, not to make them feel that they are not good enough. And from there to, then I need to also look at scale. What scale do I use to measure them? And then what is the scale again? If I want to say that you need to move from point A to B, I need to have clarity of what is at point A and point B, which again is complicated. A couple of papers that I took out and read. One is teacher-led professional development, empowering teachers as self-advocates by Michelle Stacy. Okay, so when I read that, I realized and what was missing from my earlier thought process. Earlier also, I was trying to lead it in the sense that I was still going to be in control. Though I was going to say teacher-led development, somewhere I felt that I was looking at it only from my perspective and how I could control the whole thing, the learning. But now when I read this entire thing and a lot of thought process went through, I realized that unless and until I give that respect and trust the teachers to do it on their own, with a bit of maybe, nudging, holding or being supportive, only then they are going to take it. Otherwise, it will still be Vidya's PDP program for the teachers. So that is where the shift happened. So here again, it was not a career graph, but it was more of a self-reflection. So I felt that here, instead of career graph, I could do something similar with certain areas, what is relevant to a school, more relevant in our school context. So that's why I realized that career graph is not important, but I need to develop my own self-assessment form for the teachers, and which is easier for them. And also it is more of a reflection. So when the teachers do that, they're trying to again assess areas where they need to improve for themselves. That was one shift that happened. So, Vicky had come up with this question where, what was the impact how do these teachers recognize that the impact that they have is on the larger society and they have a bigger role? That was something that was very important. I felt that if I can get it across, then teachers will understand that. So that's when I thought, one is Shubhangi has still written, like how we can get the teachers to do the summer reading, and then take them towards discussion of what should be an ideal school according to them, or how should teaching learning process happen. And every year we've been doing summer reading in our school. So this year we got Divaswapna and Total Chan. In fact, as of yesterday, we got the books, and through the school, we have given it to the teachers. So that is done. And second, like I knew that these were the discussions, and that is how from those discussions, I was going to lead to the next one, where I want to bring about the similarity between the NEP, what they have. Again, NEP is also talking about the same thing, what is mentioned in these books so many decades ago. They're still talking about critical thinking, creativity, collaborative learning, interdisciplinary learning. So I thought I can ask teachers, then they will be able to identify, okay, these are the areas where we feel that maybe as a school we need to take up interdisciplinary activities or teaching more, or where we need to maybe bring in a lot of creativity. So that was identified, one part. Okay, so do you think in the past 3 years we have been able to have a positive impact or negative impact? And that is where I'm going to get them to do the reflection of what as a school, as a team, we've done in the past 3 years. Then again, I want to talk about adaptation. Now, when we spoke about all these things through the professional development programs, through in-house training and all that, how have the teachers adapted to the school? Has there been a positive adaptation or negative adaptation? Have they been able to shed certain practices, or are we still holding on to some practices which is not allowing us to bring the desired shift, or see the differences in the school? That was something that I'm going to bring about. So then if they identify, again, these are the areas where we still feel that we as a school, as a team need to function, then that helps us to identify, narrow it down to what are the areas that we need to bring about a shift. And again, the same way through the Divaswapna and Total Chan and NEP, again, we're going to identify through the discussions, what do you think we need to do or to bring about a change? The teachers will be able to identify and again narrow it down. So once I've narrowed down what are the areas, that is through the teachers, through the teacher-led discussion, if the teachers are able to list down these are the areas, then again through the consensus we're going to identify which do they think is the most important for this academic year, and if we can focus on that, design it in such a way that teachers will identify, okay, if this is what we are going to take, then how can they design it? Like how can we develop the professional development program? Maybe the entire 10 of them can be split up into different groups, or 15 of them. Yeah, we have about 12 of us. Okay, so 12 of them can be split up into maybe 4 different groups or 3 different groups. And then each one of them can develop the professional development based on what they have identified and present it, through the peer learning and sharing to the rest of the group. And then as we presented, I also thought, again, we'll see how is it that they can see this visible, like visibility in there, or bringing about a change in their teaching learning practices. So maybe again, we could have peer observation. Now since they have done the training, when they observe each other's classes, they would be able to find out if the teachers have been able to take it back. And we can have a review every month and see whether the teachers, where is the learning happening? Have they been able to process it? Have they been able to, take it back into the classroom? So this is where I have kind of zeroed down at this point of time. So even Neeraja had sent me that question, career graph, why and who, and all that, and even the vision statement. Those two also, when Neeraja had asked me that question, okay, that also made me to think. Okay, and so I would say Neeraja's again feedback, what she had written in those. Okay, whether these two are really required, and whose vision are you talking about, and career graph, why career graph, and why all that. So that also it was making things complicated. I felt it was not required, and therefore again moved and decided not to have the vision statement as well as the career graph. And when I read this teacher-led professional development also, I told you they had come up with this rubrics. When I looked through the entire rubrics, I felt that this was more of a self-assessment for the teachers, and they were not, and it's not going to be marked or, like they're not going to be grading themselves. Instead, it's more of a reflection tool for them to see what are the areas that they need to work to improve. So I felt this was better when compared to the career graph.
From what you said, Shubhangi's questions, Vicky's suggestions was a trigger, but mainly it seemed to be what you read that made a difference. Would you
Yes.
say that?
Yeah. Again, reading, and also again, I would say that I also slowed down and I sat down and thought through the entire process. Yes, there is a lot of clarity that it has to be a teacher-driven professional development, and I just need to be the facilitator there. Okay, and probably give them maybe just support them where required. But as much as possible, I want it to be led by them. So for me, actually, I think the first test will happen when we come back, when the teachers come back after the holiday, and when we have the discussion, the very first, that is what is going to actually, help me to find out. So I think that's where I need to learn, because I really need to learn to give the space for the teachers and allow them to express and just sit back. From there, I feel the direction in which it is going to go would entirely be based on what the outcome of those teacher-led discussions is going to be. So I want to make it a sustainable practice, not just for 1 year and okay, at the end of 6 months, I got my AR and okay, there I am dusted, done and dusted. I don't want to do that. I want it to be a sustainable practice. When I say sustainable practice, maybe we can create that culture in school where the teachers start identifying that, and maybe they take it up. Okay, maybe this year we work on maybe questioning skills, or next year we work on maybe student management. So they take it up and they identify and they work through that, and the entire planning. So as one more advantage is, when they start doing this, I think we're also empowering them in different ways. When I say that, it could mean that I'm also grooming them for various leadership roles tomorrow, as the school is very young right now. So tomorrow, when they become head of the departments or coordinators, they already have gone through the process. So their own abilities, skill set, knowledge, learning is growing. So that way, the school is also going to benefit, and I'm also preparing them for future roles that they may take up. Okay, even if not everyone is going to become, head of the department or something else, but even then, each teacher, even if not in my school, when they go outside, I want them to feel that yes, the 3 years or 4 years that I spent at Delhi World Foundation has transformed me, has helped me to become a better teacher, and that is something I definitely want. And fourth, most importantly, if I can get it done, I feel my job as a school leader is to always nurture others, and through them, I'm also able to impact the students and the parent community. I feel the kind of impact it's going to have is going to be a lot more.
So I'm almost done. I just have one last bit to share with you. So as you can see, this is a principal who was passionate about empowering teachers to take charge of their own development. And initially, the strategies which he had thought of were very principle driven. But after reading and being asked questions by her cluster members, she reformulated these ideas and began to suggest to teachers that they reflect and they articulate where they want to bring about change and how they could align with the existing vision. The biggest discovery she made, in my view, is that if she wanted teachers to take charge of their own development, first, she had to relinquish charge. So the mode of engagement with teachers shifted from a sort of centralized manner in the reflective writing course, where it was mainly driven by me, to the other programs where it became a little more decentralized. They started working in groups. And we hope that we are moving towards this kind of a model where teachers across the country, they network with each other. I had a lot of learnings through this whole process, mostly through the pandemic. Before pandemic, I would approach heads of schools for teacher development. And I would experience quite often hesitation because the principals would say, I don't know how long these teachers are going to stay in my school. And if I invest in their development and they go to another school, it's a waste. But during the lockdown, I started reaching out directly to teachers. And I discovered, to my utter delight, so many eager teachers who are willing to invest their time, their money, and their effort in their own development. Despite online classes, despite domestic work, etc., teachers, I'm happy to report, are hungry to connect, ideate, develop, read, and discuss. I'll be happy now to open it up for questions. I hope, Dubeji, I've stuck to my time. Thank you for listening to me so patiently.
Thank you, Neeraja, for such a beautiful and interesting and also creative presentation.
Thank you.
You talked about, you say the facts and research in day-to-day classroom teaching, and a very interesting point that the teacher has to take the charge of his own development, and also teaching process to be more process-driven rather than outcome-driven. I think these are very, very interesting things. I'm sure my colleagues from the schools will have lots of questions to ask you.
Thank you.
But I want to thank you once again.
Thank you.
Before I request Professor Krishna to make some observations, I think I have a hand raised. Kalpana wants to ask a question. She is coordinator of middle school in Rajghat Patient School. Kalpana, please unmute yourself.
Sir, hello, sir. Sir, I can raise my question a little later. Let Professor Krishna speak first. That's okay.
Okay. So I have a question from Sakti ji, and I want to ask you, Neeraja ji.
Yeah.
He says that don't you feel that well-meant and well-created structures can still hinder creativity of a teacher?
Yes and no, in the sense that it depends on how the structure is held. If structures are held very rigidly, the best of structures can hinder. If they are held with flexibility, even the worst of structures can help. So I think it's more the how than the what.
Okay, thank you. Professor Krishna, sir, unmute yourself, sir. Yeah, okay.
What occurred to me in listening to this whole talk was that though Neeraja started with a statement saying that she is not competent to talk about Krishnamurti's teaching, it seemed to me that the entire talk, to a large extent, is a practical application of Krishnamurti's approach to education.
Thank you.
Because central to Krishnamurti's approach to education is the fact that one must not use fear, reward or punishment, or competition and comparison. That it should be a process by which both the teacher and the student are learning together. The school should be a place of learning. And that means it's an interactive process of learning together. And what she has pointed out, I feel, are practical applications which take us in that direction of awakening the intelligence rather than a mechanical functioning of transferring knowledge from the teacher to the child, in which, when there is a mechanical way of doing it, the intelligence of the child is not awakened, nor of the teacher.
Yes.
Whereas what she has pointed out would awaken the intelligence and create an element of joy because of that, both for the student and for the teacher. And that is so essential for getting the attention rather than a forced attention by asking the child to concentrate on the subject matter. So I would say that perhaps not the entire teaching, because Krishnamurti's teaching also included learning as self-knowledge
Yes.
and sensitivity and so on. But as far as classroom practices are concerned, I think that what Neeraja has pointed out is the way one would approach education from Krishnamurti's point of view.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. May I request Harshji to make some brief observations, sir?
Yes, first let me commend Neeraja ji for
Thank you.
the energy and the commitment that she has given to this. I think she raises many important points about being reflective teaching, about process, about cooperative learning, about which, I mean, are very, very important. I'm glad that you're spreading this message and you're taking it upon yourself, which I think is very important, particularly in this country,
Yes.
where I think teachers are much more mechanical about the way they approach their. I've taught in England, so it's not quite as bad, but there too, it is not as reflective as it might be. So I think it's very important. I, however, have taught for 37 years and actually have been interested in exactly the same things as you have. But pretty much every single one of those 37 years, I've been responsible for curriculum development, teacher development, and finding a way to bring Krishnamurti's ideas about education into practice, which is very difficult because there is no defined pedagogy there. There is no, on the contrary, he says it in the opposite way. I think the key thing is, I taught mathematics and physics, and I've done a lot of work on mathematics and physics teaching. I think, like you have, I think. And I would love sometime to have long discussions with you about all of this.
My pleasure.
I'll keep them brief just now. So one of the things he said was, in the mathematics class, I was there, the most important thing is not the teaching of mathematics. It's the awakening of intelligence. Right? So he was very clear that that was secondary. The subject was, of course, you had to teach it, but and other things really basically to do with the purpose of education. And he says very clearly that the purpose of education is not to produce mere scholars or technicians and job hunters, but integrated men and women who are free of fear. I'm actually reading out a quote to you. So this was the challenge that he put. And many other things. For example, he said very clearly that the man who knows how to split the atom but has no love in his heart becomes a monster. So the challenge he put to us at the Krishnamurti schools was to go beyond what teaching the subject go, which he said was necessary. It's, you have to do it. But even at the same time as you're doing that, to be doing that extra thing. And this is why I think what the other lady who talked at length on one of your video clips about the vision statement, you know, the vision of the school. And then she said she had to align herself with the vision of the school. And I would say that's a very important thing, because what actually happens depends very much on the vision. I mean, I can give you an extreme example. You have, you know, people go to these training and coaching classes for IAS exams in India. It's very common, people, and they go to class and they learn. And you have things like the Brilliant Academy or whatever it's called, which guarantees you success. But the way they do it is essentially by rote learning, by mechanical learning, by picking out important topics and practicing past papers again and again and giving you model answers to all kinds of questions. And sure enough, they are very successful. They are, but I think none of us would call that an education. It's really, but that's what they're setting out to do. That is their vision, if you like. So what we are setting out to do, and the deeper you go into it, the deeper you understand that part of, whether you like it or not, by the way you are in the classroom, you're teaching them not just what you're actually directly teaching, but also all the nonverbal, the way you relate, the way you challenge, the way, that whole thing is part of what they're learning. Are they learning authoritarianism? Are they learning to be driven by reward and punishment, and so on? So I think these are all things that need also to be addressed by teachers. So I think that is all I want to say just now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad. Thanks a lot. Kalpana, are you ready now to ask?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Good afternoon, Neeraja. Thank you for such a stimulating session. I mean, the initial part when you were explaining it was so inspiring and motivating. Now I just wanted to ask a couple of things which are, like, I think more functional in nature. One is that I know that things would be available on the website for us who are interested to go through, but would you be also sharing this particular PPT by any chance? Because I'm into, yeah,
I can,
I'm into
not a problem. I'll share it
vocabulary.
with Beji and he will forward it. Not an issue.
Yeah, that English vocabulary part which you had mentioned, I was interested in exploring that link. Number two, I have a special interest to work with children who are diverse learners, special need children. So now, especially on the online mode and otherwise also, what happens is that, the teachers and the parents are holding hands together while working with such children. So I was just wanting to know that, because, a lot of intense work is required. So is this reflective teaching, this entire process, can it also be open to parents just in case if they are interested to be a part of it? That's one which I wanted to know, because we have to be in sync. And I think if somebody pitches in for this and is really interested, it can really help the children in a lot of in a real good manner. That's the second thing which I wanted to ask. And the third thing which I wanted to, first I'll listen to you what you want to say.
Yeah, so your first question, I will share the presentation with Dubeji. Your second question, I think it's a lovely idea for a parent and a teacher of a special child to do action research together. I think that would be beautiful. You need a facilitator for that, a third party who can run them through the framework and keep asking them the right questions. Normally, when I facilitate action research, I describe my role as that of Narada. I say, I'm Narada. My job is to just keep kindling, just keep asking questions, not provide any answers. Because the answers are best found by the people who are mired in the problem. They are not able to ask the right questions because they are so overwhelmed by the problem. I, being outside, can ask. So anyone who's outside can ask the questions and facilitate action research, which can be done by the parent and the teacher together. It's very much possible. And it's a very beautiful thing too. Very beautiful idea. Certainly work. What's your next question?
Thank you. Harish ji, you want to ask or say something? Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. First of all, namaskar to Neeraja ji, Professor P. Krishna, and all my friends. Neeraja ji, there is no doubt that you are doing excellent work, good work. you are contributing a lot to the cause of quality education in India and probably across the seas also, because you mentioned Abu Dhabi School. So please keep it up.
Thank you.
But I want to touch upon one basic point which somehow Professor P. Krishna and my friend Harsh Tankha ji also missed it. But before that, let me share with you my experience. I came to teaching in conventional schools from Christian background. I did not teach much before going to Muscat to teach in Indian school. I taught only for 2 months in the Valley School way back in 1981. And then I taught in Achut Patwardhan village school, rural school, while translating, because Upasniji felt that I was bored to death. So as a respite from that, I took few classes, and then later on, a few culture classes in Rajghat Peasant School. So, the interesting thing is that most of you are probably aware of the Blue Mountains School, started by ex-former principal of this Valley School, Frederick Gordon Pierce. It was a straight from Uti, Blue Mountain School, that I had gone to Muscat. And of course, for some time I was in Saudi Arabia for 5 years in Muscat and 5 years in Indonesia. So let me share with you one thing. I don't hold a teaching certificate, B.Ed or not even 6 months teaching course. And the miracle is that I was head of English department in Jeddah, DPS, in Indonesia, DPS for 5 years. I am credited with 6 corrections in the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. But let me tell you one thing. I specialize in common errors in India, but that is not where my heart lies. My heart lies in teaching literature, and literature is also an excuse. My heart lies in teaching life. And as Dr. Johnson said, any art is the imitation of life. So Neeraja ji, I hope that you are producing lots and lots of reflecting teachers. And I also hope, I don't know whether it is going to result that or not, but from being reflective teachers, allow them to be reflective humans, because after all, that is the purpose of life. After all, here, like Harsh Tankha and Professor P. Krishna, Dr. Harshad Parekh, others are not teachers, but they are all very much human beings. So let me share with you only one experience. I taught for 5 years or 6 years Pablo Neruda's poem, Keeping Quiet. Keeping Quiet is CBSE school. And I am damn honest. Every year for 5 years, and every year after teaching the poem, I will not be able to finish in one class. I will take at least 2 classes, that short poem. But even then, after finishing the poem, when I came out of the class, I was in daze, and I discovered one interesting thing, that I had explained the poem in a much different way from what I did last year. And I went on improving upon my explanation year after year. And then I questioned myself how this miracle happened. And the simple thing, as I said, I did not attend too many workshops. Krishnaji taught me one thing.
Would you ask the question, because there are other people?
Yeah. Krishnaji taught us one thing: love what we are doing. The tragedy is that most of the teachers become a teacher not by choice but by chance. So they don't love their trade. That is the tragedy. So, and before loving our trade, we have to love the child we are teaching. If that is there, it will find its own ways. So if Neeraja ji can tell us how do you propose to transform those poor little teachers who are in many cases subjected to your workshops under compulsion from principals, in some instances at least? How do you propose them to make reflective human beings? Thank you.
Thank you.
Firstly, I don't, teachers who sign up for my reflective writing course are not sent by their principals. They do it out of their own volition. Yeah. And about being reflective human beings versus reflective teacher, I really don't see any boundaries. I think the teacher is a human being, the human being is the teacher. And in the course that we offered, there are a number of readings which span not just education, but about the humanness of life, being human. And so there are times, in fact, where the assignments touch their personal lives and they are told to do the assignment, but they need not share it if it is too personal. So I don't see it possible to divide the teacher from the human being. It's practically impossible. It naturally, one percolates into the other, and that's how it works. I hope I've answered your question. Yeah. Anyone else?
Thank you. Thank you. I think Harshad Bhai, you want to ask something? Yes, Harshad.
No, I don't have any question, but I like to say a little bit about teaching in Krishnamurti schools. I wanted to be a teacher even when I was a student in a school because I had very good teachers. But I followed my elder brother, went to engineering, then I went to America, did PhD in electrical engineering, then I was doing research in the university. But I came into contact with Krishnaji's teachings when I was doing my PhD in America. And then I came to know that Krishnaji had the schools in India. And so I decided to be a teacher. I gave up my research work in electrical engineering at the University of Waterloo in Canada. And I was teaching physics and mathematics. And I taught for 27 years in Krishnamurti schools. And I enjoyed teaching and I liked students. And I did not learn about how to teach in a school. And I think what is required most is that you know your subject well and you love teaching and you love students. And this Krishnamurti's teachings help very much in classroom management. I feel the most important thing in teaching is what is the state of the mind of a teacher when he goes to a classroom, because many teachers are worried about completing syllabus, they plan their lessons, but I never did that. And I went about in a very slow, systematic way. And I was able to complete syllabus much before the deadline. And so the most important thing is, how do we do anything? How do we teach? How do we listen? How do we learn? How do we look at a tree or human being? And that interested me much more than teaching mathematics and physics. And I felt very, very happy to be at Krishnamurti schools, living with students and teachers in beautiful places and learning how to live. Okay, I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we'll take the last question. Durga ji, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, ma'am. Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to, share whatever, the thoughts that are coming into my mind. It's extraordinary to see so much of passion and inspiration in you. And I feel it's a marvelous work you have done. And I think I feel you're not sharing the secret without mentioning Krishna ji. I feel you have completely, brought the content and the subject in such a way. And never once you mentioned Krishnamurti, I feel the entire your work appears to be the essence of I don't know. I feel that way. And and listening to all the teachers who felt so much empowered after joining your course or whatever it is, and that is a tremendous contribution, I must say. And I think more than anything else, to develop this the spirit of inquiry in the children, that you have that is the main part, and very indirectly, subtly, that is getting inculcated. I feel it's a wonderful listening to you. Thank you so much, ma'am. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have come to the close now. Neeraja ji, thanks a lot for spending your time and being with us. Maybe we'll invite you once again sometimes in future, depending on when you are free, and organize another lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Durgaji. Thank you, everybody. But I request Durgaji to declare next Sunday's topic and speaker.
Topic I don't remember, but we'll be having Mr. S. Madhav Gopalan from Rishi Valley School. So he'll be talking to us next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neeraja ji. Kamlesh, you can close it now.
Yes.